I'm very excited to welcome our guest panelists for today's webinar. Um, it's three women who I've had the pleasure of working with quite a bit over the last two and a half years that I have been working with Anaplan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn it over to Carrie, Sadie, and Jennifer to do a brief introduction of them and their roles at Anaplan. So Carrie, why don't you kick us off?
Perfect. Hey, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. It's just Tuesday, by the way. I had to remind myself that this morning. But I lead our revenue marketing function, which is demand gen, account-based marketing, paid media, our web and digital, as well as customer marketing.
I'm Sadie Beckius, Global VP of Sales Development for Anaplan, and I lead that team that takes all the stuff from marketing and tries to make it even better, tries to add more value, but we know where the goods happen from on the marketing team.
And I'm Jennifer Salzwedel. I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing Operations and Go-to-Market Technology.
Excellent. Thank you all. And I myself am Jessica Fulis. I am a Director of Partnerships here at Inverta, and I'll be moderating today's panel. So I'm going to kind of kick things off here and then really turn it over to the experts to talk about what life has looked like inside of the four walls of Anaplan as they've been on their journey over the course of this last two and a half years that we've been working with them. So, as with every company, there's, while things are good and not everything's perfect. And so Anaplan had a few challenges kind of when they embarked on kind of how do we get to a really good, repeatable demand gen engine? When they started to ask themselves that question, there were a few challenges that they were facing. And so, the first were around, resources getting tighter. So I'm sure nobody on this webinar today knows what that's like. Sometimes headcount getting cut or getting frozen, budgets being a little bit tighter, a little more scrutinized, right? Those sorts of things. So you just have to think smarter about the way you go to market. Another thing was around a lack of segmentation. There was marketing to kind of the whole known universe in Anaplan's world, but, not a real formalized process for segmenting that universe down into marketable bits. The roles and responsibilities were a little murky. I think I remember a story, and I'm sure Jennifer will chuckle a little bit, about a webinar or a web page review that had 20 plus people on it, who all felt like they had, an opinion that should be heard and modified and heard and adapted to modify the text on the landing page. Everything was a priority, right? Who hasn't heard that before? All of a sudden, you think your programs are a priority, and then somebody swoops in and says, no, this is a priority. So you get a lot of whiplash going back and forth between the various priorities, and then everything kind of gets done okay, but nothing is truly a priority or treated as such. The nurture was something that had kind of been stale for a little while. Martech. Carrie will talk about this a little bit, but Anaplan had a pretty ideal tech stack, but it really wasn't all integrated in such a way that it could work together to really achieve kind of the nirvana when it comes to, efficient marketing operations. So talk a little bit about that. Lead scoring was a little bit all over the place. Each campaign manager kind of created a new set of rules when it came to scoring leads, which made everybody else within the organization a little like, wait, why is this webinar more impactful than this one, right? Those sorts of things. SDR enablement was a little bit lacking, to say the least. And so to Sadie's intro, her and her team didn't have a lot to go on to actually take the goodness from marketing and turn it into pipeline opportunities. So that was a little bit lacking. And then last but not least, the campaign planning framework wasn't there. So everything was happening a little bit haphazardly, a little bit kind of one-offs versus being coordinated campaigns where you get that nice 1 + 1 = 3 coefficient. That really wasn't happening as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and Jennifer and Sadie to talk a little bit about how these challenges really impacted them in their roles. So Carrie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, and I think Jessica mentioned it because I was so excited when I got hired when I saw the tech stack. I'm like, this is amazing and this can be a lot of fun. And it's already there. You know, we don't have to start that. Really what I found is that a lot of the technology was purchased by different teams and managed by different teams. And so the gap in that, and it's all, you know, everybody had the right intentions, but they were just using the technology for the ways that they wanted to use it or the ways that they thought made the most sense. And again, all good intentions. It's just none of it was integrated. And what happens with that is clearly when the customer is the one receiving all of that, it just feels like it's all over the place. And that's a little bit of what happened. And I think Jessica also mentioned the campaign framework. You know, not having that really created basically the high priority tactics. So we just had a bunch of tactics all over the place that because we're marketing, we were able to put them on a slide and it still looked good. But really underneath that was just misalignment and just running around, just trying to get everything across the finish line. And so it was definitely one of those times where, you know, you really wanted to just take a step back and say, okay, if everything's a high priority, what do we need to do to actually, you know, flip the switch? So, and I know, Jennifer, you have a lot on the tech stack as well. So I'll let you speak to that.
Absolutely. I too absolutely was thrilled with the tech stack that I inherited. By the way, I'll mention the three of us have all joined Anaplan in the last 3 years. Sorry, 2 years. And so here we are coming to the table with a position on how we thought things should be. And you can imagine that as three strong leaders, we probably had different things that we came in thinking that were important. And so, as Carrie mentioned, you know, wonderful tech stack to start with. And as we looked under the hood, we very quickly saw we had very few global standard processes that would enable us to scale and do things and bring things to market in a more efficient way. The integrations as well, you know, weren't necessarily connected correctly in the ways that we would want to see our systems creating that cohesive customer journey. I also was responsible for all of our marketing performance reporting. And so you can imagine without a data foundation and consistent taxonomy, it was really difficult for us to spit out all of that performance on the tail end. And then, of course, how we were delivering all of those insights into Sadie to help her build her service level agreements. So Sadie, tell us more about where you came in.
Yeah, as Jen said, we had just all of us, Carrie and I, Jen was a little bit over that year mark. And as we can all appreciate in this time of change in the last 3 years, the entire world, what was designed or what was decided, that person may no longer be in that seat or that process may no longer exist. And so connecting all those dots was difficult. And in my interview, when I heard about all this tech and the stack that we had to work with, my instinct was to say, ooh, productivity and visibility. And so you're instantly thinking, ooh, I can be really productive. I can have great impact. And the minute you get in, you're like, wait, this is a great stack. And then we don't have enablement on it. Or the nurture isn't relevant to who I'm trying to target. And that's when we all took a giant step back and we said, we have to do something different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
and at the end of the, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, listening to you guys talk through this, you know, you had all the right parts and pieces, right? And you had in yourselves 3 leaders who wanted to, you know, take those parts and pieces and really make them successful, right? But it was kind of that journey that kind of is what kind of ensued over the course of the following, you know, year and a half or so. But Jennifer, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah.
If you had
No, not at all. I was just going to add in, you know, at the end of the day, we had a people, process, and technology challenge to solve for. And again, it would have been so easy for any one of us to stay in our siloed path and kind of control our controllables in our lane. And we recognized very quickly that we needed a reference point towards best practices and sequencing the work in the right order. It wouldn't make sense for us to do, you know, far end process development if we didn't have the foundations right. And so Inverta really helped us come together, We knew we were going to be better together. We have a great partnership, great working relationship. But then it also helped us align on all of the priorities. Where do we start? What do we take on next? And so it's really been a fulfilling effort in seeing, actual impact to the things that we're focused on.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have made it fun. I'm not going to lie. It's, there's been hair pulling moments and there's been, big high five moments, virtual high fives. Although we did get to see each other in November, which was, in this time of post-COVID, that it feels like a treat to actually all get together. But, I think it has been that willingness to really be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And tackling a lot of these things that I think has really led to kind of your success. So speaking of that, what I would like to ask you, Carrie, to walk us through now is kind of where, okay, we've identified the challenges. Where have you guys gotten to? And then we're going to take a step back after that and talk about what it took to get there. But Carrie, why don't you walk us through this slide a little bit?
Yep, perfect. And I know you're not supposed to read the last chapter of the book, so I think we're definitely doing that right now. But promise we'll go back so we can start at the beginning. But this was after a lot of hard work, honestly. And the first thing, and we mentioned segmentation, is that we actually got segmentation and a focus on industry. And so really that allowed us to start at the account level. Really here, our goal is to engage that account, drive reputation and awareness at the industry, or for us, the sub-industry level. We do that through industry web pages, through paid social, and of course, industry events. From there, we actually look at the buying center. For us, we have lots of solutions and we have lots of buying centers that we're targeting. And so this is really important for us because this is where we need to feed the solution-focused content with that industry lens. And we did that through LinkedIn Lives, where we would dive into like a specific pain point within that function, that buying function, but then also that industry or sub-industry. We automated digital nurture with Path Factory that we'll talk about to really align content based on where somebody was in the buyer's journey. And of course, we'd offer up customer stories, persona-based webinars, live demos, along with something that we call our research bundles, which is also on Path Factory. And that's where we provide access to our top analyst research. So all of that took place at the buying center. And really, if you go to the next one, you'll see that, and this is for all of us, we're all humans. And so at the end of the day, we want to market to the human, and it's really important. And so here we're able to personalize the way we engage. So allow Sadie's team to send a personalized outreach sequence directly to that customer, invite them to a personalized roundtable that's going to help them connect with their peers. Or an invitation to join we have something called Anaplan Connect, which is where we took our annual one time a year event, and we actually we're doing it 10 times throughout different cities across the globe. And so we're able to personalize each of those things. And so really, if you build it out one more, you're going to see that what we've been able to get to is being able to target the account, the buying center, and the human, all aligned to where they are in the journey. And this allows us to put the customer at the center of all we do, which for us was the most important thing. When I mentioned all the tactics everywhere, we didn't want to do that. We wanted to orchestrate all of these things coming together.
Wonderful.
And this also enabled our ability then to go deeper on our metrics. So we could watch buying group engagement. We could have KPIs around account-based everything. It was no longer about just a specific set of accounts. And so really thrilled with how this came forward front to back for us.
Yeah. And as you guys can imagine, taking a look at this slide, there is a technology backbone to make this all possible, right? You can't do this all manually. There needs to be connected systems. There needs to be the connected data. And then there needs to be, and what we'll talk about kind of here in the next coming slides is, orchestrating all the people, the process, and the technology to really make this a reality. So to that point, let's go on to a little bit of kind of how we tackled this. So Jennifer, why don't you kick us off with the lead framework and scoring and kind of where that came in our prior.
So clearly our lead framework and scoring was one of our key foundations that was going to influence a heck of a lot through this end-to-end process. And so it's also a dynamic, always on program. So we recognized that we really needed to establish a council around lead scoring. And so this is now embedded in our processes. The team that is committed to it is meeting monthly and having conversations around what's working, what's not working from a data-centric standpoint. We essentially, by doing that, have kicked out the auto MQL process, things that we were doing just because somebody had a hunch that they just ran the best webinar that ever existed and things like that. As well, we evolved our Salesforce campaign object. So it was super important to us to align on making sure that we're reporting on the hierarchy of tactics so that we could group them and understand how, as a holistic campaign, they were doing. We balanced our scoring more towards behavioral cues. We were initially very strongly scoring against fit almost exclusively. So it was nice to see us evolve that. I think Sadie's taking the next section.
Yes, the demand funnel, not to be mixed with the sales funnel. I think this is one of those things that people talk about, demand funnel, sales funnel, they're the same thing. And that's actually not true. The demand funnel was something we had to work on. It's helpful for me in my role to understand the demand funnel and how we progress someone along, how we progress an account along, how we do the buying center to correlate with the success. If you even look at the second bullet around alignment with enablement and sales, the clarity on the action that triggers through that demand funnel is a really big lift. It was significant to our progress and our change so that everybody's aligned, because when Jen talks about the metrics or looking at it or following through, it's really cohesive. But that first step was defining it. And then lastly, on how marketing shows up. It's literally what the SDR sees in our system on that campaign. And I like to call it the washing machine of success. It cleans out the information that is only relevant to the reader, or my team, or sales, and tells them what to do or where to go, and our enablement on that process on what they see. And it is ensuring that marketing has the information they need to continue making the best decision possible. So when sales executes with the information they have, it's still that feedback loop. And I know Jen talked about, we have definitely met on this. We have meetings around it, what's working, what's not working. But as you all can appreciate, when you get data in real time, if the SDR team is running those SDRs, if they're actually calling a person with the right message, getting that data in the same way across multiple industries, across multiple buying centers, across multiple humans, to actually give yourself significant data to look at to make a decision was a really big win for us. It was all about being more efficient and creating more visibility for all parties.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Sadie. I think the campaign object in Salesforce is probably the most underutilized sales enablement tool across the board, not just at Anaplan, pretty much with every single one of our clients, right? You know, as a campaign manager, and a lot of folks on this call are probably nodding their heads in the background, they go in and they go, okay, we need to create a campaign. Here's the naming convention if you've got a standardized one, and then type, okay, it's partner and, you know, one other piece of information, and then you build the campaign inside of Salesforce. There's so much more data that's good to transfer that data to your SDR or sales teams about what is this actual tactic about? What is the goal or objective? What's the next step that you should take, right? That is a very efficient way to deliver that information. Sadie, I think you've talked before about like, what does marketing like to show sales and what should marketing show sales, right? Because they like to be like, we sent out all this great stuff and did all this great stuff, and sales is like, cool. What was the asset and what should I do next?
For sure. And I think this is where with Carrie and Jen, we're working in just those different perspectives. I definitely, during those moments of why do you care? Why does this matter? And understanding each other's point of view was a really big win in our process. And I think, again, as you can see on the bottom, Inverta being that third party to say, well, I think what Carrie needs on the marketing side, what Sadie needs on the sales development side, what Jen needs on the operations side, having that third party in the room really helped us do this process faster. I think we all would have got there. Well, I think we're great. However, a third party in the room was so helpful. And it's not about I think some people take it like, well, no, I want to show everything. Look how hard we're working. Look what we've all done. And I think that's where, when you have the baseline foundation of, we all know the engine is running, it creates that trust and it creates that process for everybody to rely on. And when you have people interchanging that campaign object, here's what you do. You can self-serve yourself. You can go look at the information. Everyone can do it that way. It's a very small thing, but it is that kind of that funnel, or I'm going to use a negative word with a positive, that bottleneck that actually makes sure everybody's aligned. That campaign object in Salesforce is that moment, that pass through, that really helps this process go smoothly.
Amazing. All right, Carrie. So the third leg of the stool here was around campaign planning and that all important and sometimes controversial RACI. Talk to us about that.
I know. Let me talk about the fun stuff here. Yes, for the RACI, which really has become a verb now, because we're like, hey, you need to RACI that. Like, but for us, I think we mentioned roles and responsibilities were a little muddy across the board, which made things really hard to do and hard to get done. And so we workshopped a RACI. I will say we probably over RACI'd, and we had it was so detailed. And so then we were like, wait a second. And actually, to the Inverta third party perspective, we're like, we've got this, we can simplify this. And so we did our own simplified version that then Jess had to come in and be like, okay, you guys, no, go back to this. So again, that third party perspective is super helpful from a gut check for perspective. But yeah, I mean, the RACI was huge for us because, again, it's foundational, right? So none of this stuff is super sexy. I would say it's just foundational. You need a RACI so people know what they're expected to do. And then a campaign process. And again, this takes time. So this is something working on, because the runway to a true campaign process is really a year plus to get it right, to have all the right inputs. And so transparently, that's something that we're still building that muscle, I would say. But everybody needs a framework. I love a framework, so things like that are just helpful to get things off the ground. And then Jen is going to talk about the use cases for technology, but that to us was probably the biggest thing, where we had to step back and say, okay, what are the gaps? What are the things, the problems that we need to solve, and get really focused on utilizing technology to do that versus do all the cool things that it can do. And so with that probably sets Jennifer up for the next slide as well.
That was the perfect transition. I won't even interject. Jennifer, go ahead.
Absolutely. So, you can imagine a technology audit, and, in many organizations that would be, a tech stack diagram. And for us, really, we needed to go into the roles and responsibilities and actually document current state, some of the things that we actually did not have in our ecosystem at the time. And so looking across the tech stack, identifying everything from center of excellence approach on things like marketing automation and Marketo, to single points of failure, where we had a single person who knew how to use a piece of technology because they brought it into the organization. So how do we balance across all of those different approaches? We also needed to get the foundations right and make sure that we were bringing those right use cases forward. And so as we started to talk about the things we wanted to do first, as Carrie mentioned early on, nurture we knew was not where it needed to be. So let's make sure that we're prioritizing the technology towards the things where we knew we would have the biggest gains and the biggest impact. Accountability was really tough, because when you have that disparity on how you're managing your technology, it makes it really hard to decide, well, what are we going to take on first? You may have one team who's like, I got to get my ABM campaign out. And you've got another team that's saying, oh, but webinar programs are the most important things we can fix right now. How do you balance that? And how do you create that? So we started with documenting current state. And ultimately, I think we could just go ahead and jump to the next slide, Jessica, because what we figured out for ourselves was we needed to differentiate the system administrator role from the campaign orchestration role and go deeper on all of the sub roles that come together so that the system administrators could focus on implementations and integrations and governance. And the campaign orchestrators then can focus on efficient go lives and the optimization, what's going to be better for the next campaign. And so differentiating that really helped us identify the right swim lanes for the right technologists. And that's been a big game changer for us in the mix. I don't know, Carrie or Sadie, if you have anything else to add on this slide as the outcome from making that decision.
I think just, again, it's the clarity of roles, because I think everybody thought they owned different pieces and different decisions. And this allowed people to say, nope, that's not your final decision. And for us, like, final decision making was important. We needed it. So,
yeah.
I would add in, I think we talk about this, like, what part do you have? And I say this to the team all the time, in my team, like, no one wakes up every day excited to fail. Like, no one says, I can't wait to make a decision that isn't going to work. I can't wait to do this. And so getting clarity on what part you own so that you can execute well was a really good thing internally for our team. I think that was a big piece of this too, is like, hey, you don't own the whole thing, and you don't have to take on that responsibility either, because I think there were people owning it, but it wasn't working because there were so many moving parts. And so I would just think about that when you're looking at ownership and what are all the moving pieces.
And I think that's a great point, because a lot of companies, somebody will say, well, I own that technology. Great. What do you own about it, right? Do you own the strategy on how it's being used? Do you own the integrations? Do you own, right? And typically they don't want to own everything soup to nuts, or they can't, or they don't have the expertise to, right? And so I think it's really important. And I think that was also, this was a good exercise to help kind of wrangle the tech stack a little bit, because there were owners outside of MOPS of some of the technologies, right? So it was like, okay, fine. If you want to quote unquote own it, great. You're the content person. So we're going to let you own the strategy for Path Factory, but the technical integrations and the data and the reporting and stuff should probably sit within MOPS. Cool. Are we good with that? Great. Thanks. Right. And then move on.
Yeah.
But that is a conversation that I think happens inside most organizations kind of on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'll just add one more thing quick, which is it also helped us establish responsibility around documentation. It was, teams would finish big exercises and not document all of those key decisions that we had just made and aligned on. And so it also created the ability for, take it home, team, take it all the way through. Let's document, let's create those resources so that then we know what areas we need to focus on the things that are not working. You can get into a much more constructive conversation around those things. So that was a big win, I feel, as well.
I love it. All right. So far we've done the technology audit. I think next up was really getting to that segmentation that you had talked about, so that you could really address your audience in a meaningful way. So I'll turn this over to you, Carrie.
Yep, perfect. I'm kind of laughing at myself because it's like racy segmentation. Like, these things are not, these are foundational things, guys, but like, how exciting, like the joy that segmentation has brought is really big, because again, when you look at what we showed you before, we could not have done that without segmentation. So segmentation allowed us to say, okay, first we're going to take an industry approach. Great. Okay, within our existing customers, where's the white space? Plug for Anaplan. Anaplan has a model that pulls this together that Jen's team does an amazing job at, but we're actually able to see all of this where we can say, okay, this buying center has this. That's installed, but we can go to this buying center and they don't have this. And so this is a slide we actually presented on stage at our AKO. We call it the periodic table slide. But honestly, everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Because it allowed us to quickly see the white space and the opportunities that we have. And it created that alignment. So from a marketing perspective, we can get really focused in terms of where we have the opportunity to win. What does that look like? And then actually, Sadie, I'll hand it over to you, because it also provides that sales alignment, which is goodness.
For sure. And I think this is, if I could give a gift, and we can't see anybody on this call, if I can, and we don't have the chat open, which is great, and we'll have the questions, but this is one slide that made sense to a lot of different people. And the reason why is because we could all rally around this. If you think about your tech stack and you think about this flowing through, first we did that segmentation, and then everybody got really aligned on rules of engagement and who does what and what are you going after. Sales development, hey AE, what are you going after? Marketing, how are you emailing this group? And then with Jen and team, this is that progress. This is where this shows up. So if you look at this, there's percentages, and the entire company can rally around, we're making an impact. What a delight. It's one slide, and all of a sudden you have everything coming into one of, hey, Sadie, your team knows where to go. Jen, where are the percentages it moving in solution A and it doesn't have C? Why aren't we making more impact there? This is readily available for anyone to see, and we're movement. And I think with the macroeconomics of the world we're in, I think everybody can appreciate this. Figuring out how you're moving the needle as a collective group, SDRs, marketing, someone who's running demand base, who doesn't get to touch this every day. You know, the solutions consultant who's just part of that one industry, they get to see the whole company come together. I'd encourage anyone to look at this and leverage with a story as well as connecting that data, because obviously with the data in there, we had to do the system, the metrics are all aligned pretty quickly, because now everybody loved it, which now we have to keep talking about it, which means we have to keep the data flowing and our tech stack. But if I had to give any words of advice to the team, this was a big visual connecting all the dots for everyone to move the needle together. It was a really powerful moment for our company.
Yeah, and going back to that first slide where we covered the challenges, you know, this helps to start to provide that focus and start getting out of that everything is a priority kind of, you know, vicious cycle, right? Because now you're like, oh, no. When we look at these numbers, okay, this box, and this box, this is where we have the biggest white space. So everything we do is going to be focused on that for the next 2 quarters to go and take as much of that white space as we can, right? And that aligns sales and marketing, even the customer success org, right, around those same metrics so that everybody has the same focus, right? Awesome. All right. So the next up, talking a little bit about kind of, okay, great. So now you've got this, you've got your tech stack, you've done the audit, you've got things connected, you've got the right ownership so people can make sure that the connectedness stays connected and those sorts of things. Then you've got that segmentation of who you need to go after with what types of messages. And then here's where you get to that pulling it all together in these use cases. How do you take the technology and the messages and the content and pull it all together in a really coordinated campaign that speaks to the specific segments? So Carrie, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. And again, I think what Jennifer talked through in terms of the use case and really identifying what those are was super helpful because there are a lot of use cases for each of the technologies here. And that's the first thing, is to prioritize those based on your objectives. What are you trying to do? And so again, with the segmentation that we had, we said, okay, what do we need to do? The first thing is demand-based for us was typically used as just an ABM tool for like our 1 to few programs. And so demand-based was kind of over here, and it's like, no, that's just for the ABM team, right? And so we had to take a step back and say, wait a second, we're trying to orchestrate, right? We're trying to go after all of these accounts, very targeted accounts with very specific messages. Demand-based becomes that hub. And so that's just one thing to note. That's where we started to pull everything together to say, okay, demand-based can be the one to bring through different pieces from like an email perspective from Marketo to trigger the nurture. And for us, this was our focus. Our nurture, and Jennifer mentioned it too, was very broken, very hard to update. The content was outdated. And so for us to be agile, and again, think of like high priority, like new content comes, you need to quickly get it out there. We said, okay, nurture, this is what we need to solve for so that we can reach all those different audiences based on where they are in the buyer's journey. And so with demand-based, we're able to do that. Marketo can support the email, but we would put all the content into Path Factory to allow for that binge content consumption versus relying on every single email that would go through. Offer up drift with a very specific CTA. And then again, utilize demand-based for some of the paid media and triggering that to align into the buyer's journey. So for us, again, we focused, and we are still focusing on very specific use cases for each of the technologies, trying it, learning from it, because we don't get it right. As Sadie says, you don't wake up and want to fail, but sometimes you learn lessons, and then continue to implement. And I think that brings us, yeah, I was gonna say that brings us to that final slide, which is, you know, the what we did again, what we were able to do. And I think this was all, and Jessica said it earlier, that foundation of what you just saw enabled all of this and enabled us to put the customer at the center. But I would say this was like very foundational because there's so much that we're doing. And so when I look at like this and what we're able to do, I like to say we double click. We are double clicking into each of these things, each of these technologies. We're identifying the next use case that makes sense and the next way that we can really drive that personalization at scale. That's ultimately our goal, is to continue to get better at that, as well as with the campaign planning process, which I know I mentioned earlier. But yeah, Sadie and Jennifer, I'd be interested, when you look at this, like we're still on a journey, what else do you see?
Go for it, Jen.
Okay, we're definitely going to be focused more on where can we enable more automation. You know, where does it make sense to have automation in both the customer journey and in our internal processes? So we're looking at work automation. How do we make sure that these very robust campaigns come to life in a way where we know that customer experience is going to be cohesive at the far end? So more technology coming into what we're going to integrate with. And Sadie, I think that all impacts your team in how they then get to experience the different trigger points.
100%. And we getting better at this, or showing more, like I think Carrie used a great word, binge, on what they're consuming. And then we can have what's that last one and be fast and implement what that actual audience cares about, the group, the human, or and by the way, as an SDR, the account, using all the technology at the account level, to the buying center, to the human, your message needs to be on point the minute you're actually going to that human. If that one buying center is looking at it, but it's a different human, what do you do? What do you say? And we're connecting those dots, and we did it based off of leveraging and leaning into that tech stack to showcase that call to action. And this is a big piece of, when you get to that end on the outreach side, that SDR is set up for success, and it keeps that ball rolling throughout the entire sales process.
Yeah. And I love that you guys, you know, took the time, although I feel like we sped through a lot of the foundational work, right? But you took the time to get that done and get it done right. And then, you know, came into kind of this next phase with a little bit of it's going to be an iterative process, right? We're not going to get it completely right out of the gates. To your point, Jennifer, like, okay, we're going to automate the things that are obvious and easy right now. We'll go back and continue to iterate and make it better time over time. It's not like y'all took off, you know, Q2 because we got all this work done in Q1. Like, that didn't happen, right? So it's just going to be a constantly iterative process. And let's be clear, I'm sure that from time to time, your organization, your CMO, your CRO are going to throw a curveball at you. But as we've talked about, you guys are more equipped now to handle those curveballs because you have this foundation in place.
A word that was floating around that I'll give Jessica credit to, it was future proof. And I loved it. It made me excited because I was like, yes, the curveballs, and we have a way to address them in a more efficient way. So I'll throw Jessica, when she had said it, future proof makes it more exciting for all of us to keep going, right? To keep the changes so that we can do this, and we can do it better than we did it before.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all. This was really a great presentation. Really fun chatting with you all, as I get the pleasure of doing from time to time. But, you know, now we want to throw it over to the Q&A to, you know, kind of dig in a little bit deeper to, you know, what inquiring minds who have been on today's webinar want to know. So for those of you that are on the webinar, please feel free to put some questions into the Q&A box. And I'm going to stop sharing here so we can see everybody's faces just a little bit bigger on screen, and kind of kick us off with, you know, some initial questions that came in during the presentation. So first of all, first question we got was, okay, so you keep talking about this great tech stack that you guys have. Do you feel like there's anything missing currently from your tech stack?
I honestly think what's missing is the deeper integrations, right? Is to keep going down that path. But of course, we have our eyes on AI. We have our eyes on a CDP. We have our eyes on things because it is challenging to be looking at buying groups without a premise of looking at holistic account level experiences and things like that. And so I think those are the things that we think about. Also, when you think about a human experience, we also need to take it to in-region languages. So we also will have a big focus on how we leverage technology to make sure that that human experience, when it's in different languages, is also cohesive. And so I think those would be the big things that I think of.
Yeah, and I would just plus one to that, especially on that localization factor, because we are a global company, and that's probably one of our biggest pain points right now.
Nope, that is fair. All right, so the next question, and Sadie, I think this one's straight for you. So what would you say are the keys to the marketing and SDR alignment? You talked a little bit about it, but would really like to understand, what is it, right? Instead of the flashy PowerPoint saying, here's all the cool stuff we're doing, at its core, what does your team need to be successful? And what is the best way to convey that to the SDR organization?
I definitely got lucky with this group. So yes, that's part of it. I think when sales and marketing come together, what happens is there's like, what have you done? Sales is very much so what have you done for me lately? I can't see any of your faces on this call, but I think we can appreciate sales is thinking that way. And that's fine because they're in the role they're in. And sometimes marketing will tell the whole thing. Marketing likes to give all the data, tell you all the things that are happening to, I don't have a better word. It validates that something's working in between. And I just get to work with Jen and Carrie and the salespeople. Like, I believe what I needed was how to help hold my team accountable to the SLAs. So when Jen works with us and she talks about the metrics and the campaign objects there, and I can check and I can say, did they use the right message? Did we use our tech stack to say the right message? Which there are other ones you can do, right, to make sure it's all working. And did they do it in a timely fashion? And so what I needed for marketing was those things to be aligned, because I knew I'm an operationally minded person. So I knew all the stuff that was in the washing machine, and I was excited, right? That tech stack we talked about, but to serve it up and then to make sure that something was being executed. I think the most deflating thing you can happen between marketing and SDR alignment and sales alignment is when something isn't actually done. You served up this beautiful dinner and nobody came to the table is really annoying. I'm sure you can all appreciate it's really annoying. And so the goal is I just need to know how to see it. I need the visibility to see it so that I can be an advocate for my business partners. And also, it makes my life easier. Everything marketing does makes sales easier. So I'm going to lean in. I would much rather call somebody who's gone through the Path Factory and maybe did a drift and now we did Sendoso, we sent something. I'd much rather engage that person than just a download of a contact, right? But logic, scale, everything just kind of gets muddied. And I hope my team and with this group, we just stay in the logic. I will tee that up. We had a question also come in that was talking about holistically measuring success of your programs. This is kind of coordination of that is I'm a part of that success. Marketing, the tech stack, and sales are all part of that success. So if you're focusing like similar metrics, we showed that one slide where we all are focused on moving the needle to that one industry, to that one solution. We're all there. There's so many pieces going into that. And so it's a goal across marketing and sales. And I'm bought into that success because I also know the demand funnel to the sales funnel helps me. So to answer that question along with prompting it a little bit too is very similar metrics that align to everyone's. It definitely helps move the needle faster.
I'm also going to give you some credit, Sadie, in the partnership back into the practices, right? Is you and your team have a great feedback loop into us on, in real time as the frontliners of who are talking to customers first, in understanding where things are making sense, where things are connected, where things are disconnected, or if something's completely broken, right? You are not afraid to raise your hands. And that's great, is to have the full, again, closed loop partnership and conversation, where we're focusing on the right things at the right times.
But the team for marketing, however you can work on with your groups, is assume a positive intent. right? Like no one can't wait to drop the ball. No one said this person downloaded content. I can't wait to not call them. So when we're working with marketing and I'm working with field marketing and it's like, I didn't see it. Oh no. And that's where, when Jen talks about that ball was dropped and now we see them all and we just get to do it together. And so assuming positive intent with each other was such a big piece of, which is hard to do. I know people on the call, that's hard to do. But when you have the data to see it and then you change it and you see the progress, that solidifies that momentum forward.
Well, excellent. Well, I know I promised you 9:45 as kind of wrapping up things here, and I think we've gotten through all of our questions. So thank you so much to the three of you for A, participating on today's webinar, but B, for your partnership. It has been a joy to work with you guys and to see where you guys have gotten to in such a short amount of time. And all the things you've been willing to lean into and tackle. And I think Anaplan is going to be better for it because of all this work. So thank you all so much. Thank you to all the attendees today for your questions and for, joining us today. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to reach out to Inverta. And if they're directly for any of the three women on today's call, I'm happy to redirect those questions to them to get some answers to you. So thank you all so much. And everybody have a great day.